different message. Now, Brother Bob, he can take 5 verses. He gave me 5 verses to speak on. Well, he can speak on it for an hour. I could probably got 3 minutes, but after I read it. So I've got some other rabbit trails I'm going to go down, and so that they're all kind of related, but you'll see what I'm talking about a little bit. And if you turn over to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8. So the reason I tell you to go to chapter 5 and verse 8, that's where we're supposed to start, but I'm going to remind, who spoke last week, You did? Well, then I'll have to remind you of all of it. You want to repeat all that? We're going to, he spoke on Ephesians 5, chapter 1, and it says, therefore be imitators of God as dear children, verse 2, and walk in love as Christ also loved us and gave himself for us. And then the whole series on Ephesians, Brother Bob gave a name, is light in the evil world. And we got an evil world. Come in here. And I see that Jamie finally brought him in. He didn't want to come, but she made him.
He promised to behave.
Promised to behave.
He waited until after we took the collection over.
Oh, yeah. Good to see you folks. But light in an evil world is this whole series in Ephesians that Brother Bob named it that. And this is one of them, walk in love. And he tells us we should do that. What if we didn't know what love was? What if we'd never experienced love? Could you explain what love was? Love is a lot of things you can't explain unless you've experienced a little bit of it. And but you could. Most people have fortunately had some love. I've met a few people that didn't. Like I was telling the Bible school last time, the folks had a little boy. Everybody was, we probably heard this story, but had a little boy. He was giving trouble at the church. His bus kid. We had about 600 kids there. You remember? We had him in the main auditorium, and he was having so much trouble. Jerry came to me and said, "Man, nobody can handle him. Everybody's trying to handle him." And he's about 12 years old. He didn't want to be there. He told them he didn't want to be there. I don't know why he came. Anyway, I said, "Okay, I'll sing a song or somebody else do something." I went back there and talked to him, and he was he was still mad. I don't know. He got on the wrong bus, I guess. He got off on the wrong side of the bed, and he got on the wrong bus. Anyway, so he got up there, and I couldn't do anything. We were in back in the back hall there, and over close to the corner. And I said, "Don't you stand in the corner." I pushed his head toward the corner. Well, he's jumping around. I don't think I pushed him that hard, but he hit it, And I said, "Don't you move from there until I get back." Well, I was gone for about 5 minutes. His glance came back. Sure enough, he was there. I was surprised. I'm glad he was, but I was surprised he was there. Anyway, he got up there, and I went up and said, "Hey, I'm sorry I pushed your head, bumped you into the wall. Would you forgive me?" He's still kind of crying a little bit. I said, "I'm sorry I did that. You forgive me. And I'd like you to come down the front row and help me be my helper." And I hugged him. He changed his tune. He went down there, stood on the front row. Everybody was at the end of the day, everybody was leaving. The kids were all, filing out. They were all running out. And get out there, and this little boy standing right there, front row. What is happening to him? And he said, I came up to him, and I thought, maybe he's still got an issue here. He said, "Would you hug me again?" And think, that little kid probably never had that kind of love. You don't know what love is until you've experienced it. I don't know if he'd ever experienced any love back then. Now maybe he had, but he had been hugged, and he liked that. So, and then verse 8, chapter 5, verse 8 of Ephesians, says to walk in light. First was walk in love. This is just walk in light. For you were once in darkness, But now you're in the light. Walk as children of light. Now, what does that mean? Well, we don't light up. We don't. In fact, people, I remember my sister used to tell me I wasn't too bright. So, she told me a lot of other things too. But we don't light up, but we kind of know what that means because we've been around. Our whole language is built around analogies. It's kind of like light and darkness. We know what light and darkness is, but how does that apply to our spiritual world? So a lot of analogies are there for the spiritual analogy. And then back in going back to walk as children of light, 1 John 1:7, you're familiar with this. But if we walk in the light, as he said up in the first verse, as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. So he tells us to walk in the light. And what does that mean? Well, in another verse is, you are the light of the world. And we said we wouldn't have light, but Jesus is the light. But now he's telling us that we're the light. And this is another spiritual analogy to physical light. We don't understand a lot of things, but there's a lot of things in our language. Like I say, there are a lot of analogies to understand, particularly things we can't see, or we can't feel, or we haven't experienced, or we can't hear. Those things are taste or whatever. Use our senses or our experience in our emotions. If we didn't have those things, a lot of things we couldn't understand. My degree is in electrical engineering, but when I think about electricity, even though I still think I've used all the equations and everything else I got in school for electrical systems, But what I really think about myself, I think about what I was taught in the 5th grade was like water running through a pipe, So I still think of, now electricity, you can't see it, you can't hear it. If you're not careful, you can feel it. but you can. But electricity was. I still think of it like the. And then I think the analogies. Okay, a battery or a generator that's creating this electricity. That's kind of like the voltage. That's like water pressure. Water pressure and voltage are the same kind of analogy. And then the current that flows through there, it's not measured in gallons per minute, but it's measured in coulombs per second, which is called amps. You probably know what it is. Even Gary's probably used amps. And so we have these analogies. Can y'all name some other analogies in the Bible? Just think about some analogies that Jesus used. I'll give you a hint. About a third of everything he said was in an analogy. Then he said, it's like this and this. When he used the parables were not meant to be taken exactly like he said. They had a spiritual meaning and a physical meaning. Remember what did he say to the woman at the well? He says, this water I give you, you'll thirst again. I mean, this is water that you drink here, or as well, you'll thirst again. But the water I give you, you'll never thirst. Here's an analogy, so she can understand water and the water I give you. And you meant you're not going to be spiritually thirsty. You won't run out of that. So there's other ones like he says, I'm the door. Well, he's not a door like that, but he means I'm a way to come into to the Father. And then some others. Y'all think of any more? Y'all probably think of
Salt.
Huh? Salt. You're the salt of the earth. And we spoke on that just recently. Was it Bob? You're the salt of the earth. Doesn't take very much. But if it doesn't taste salty, it doesn't do much good. It just takes a little bit and says you're the salt of the earth. Another one is he talks about I'm the vine and you're the branches. Here's another analogy. So there's lots of analogies. The parable of the sower. Now he says in there that let me get I think I have that there somewhere. Mark 4. It's in every one of the Gospels. But again, he got to teach by the sea and great multitude. I'm going to get back to Ephesians in a minute, but it'll be a while. And he got in a boat and sat in it in the sea, and the whole multitude was on the land facing the sea. And he taught many things by parables, and said to them in teaching, "Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow, and it happened, he sowed, and some seed fell on the wayside, and the birds of the air came and devoured it. And some fell on stony ground where it did not have much earth, and immediately it sprang up, but because of no depth of the earth. But when the sun was up, it scorched, and because it had no root, it withered away. And some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no crop. But other seed fell on the ground and yielded a crop that sprang up, increased, and produced, some 30-fold, some 60, some 100. He didn't have the experience I did with planting some grass seed this year, but he told these things, and he wasn't talking about telling you how to be a farmer. That's not his purpose. His purpose was that he wanted to tell you spiritual thing. And you know the spiritual thing and about it when it and these things. In fact, he after everybody was gone, he got the disciples together, and they said, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And he said, "Here's what I'm talking about." He says unto them, "Do you not understand this parable? And how will you understand all the parables? The sower sows the word, and the ones for the wayside where the word was sown. And when they hear, Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. And likewise the one that grows on stony ground. When they hear the word, immediately they receive it with gladness, but they have no root in themselves. And afterwards the ones that are sown among thorns, they're the ones who hear the word, and the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches and desires and other things enter in and choke out the word." You ever met with people like that? They got saved and then they turned back to their old ways. I'm not saying they're not saved, but these other desires have choked out the word. But then one sowed on good ground, those who hear the word and accept it, and it bears fruit, some 30-fold, some 60. So he's explaining it to them. In fact, he tells a little bit later on there that, hey, I speak of these because I want the people who want to receive me, they understand this. You think the Pharisees understood what he's talking about? They thought he was talking about farming, but that's not what he's talking about. So these analogies help us to understand. Again, going back to Ephesians 5:8. For you were once in darkness, but now you're the light of the Lord. What does it mean, the light of the Lord? And walk as children of the light. I'm going to go down another rabbit trail here. Children of the light. I read a book 2 months ago by Michael Denton. He's a scientist. And he's trying to prove or show how God designed the whole universe just for us. And it's called fine-tuning. How everything has to work together for us to even exist. And he talked about this universe being very fine-tuned. And how many physical constants in the universe have to be just right. If one's too much this way, they can come apart. Gravity. If gravity was a little bit stronger, just a fraction stronger, the universe would collapse on itself. If it was a little bit lighter, it'd all come apart. You just have to be just right. And there's dozens of if you have electricity going through a wire, that generates outside the wire what they call an electromagnetic field. And now it's not very strong outside the wire, not very far away from it, but you can measure the current going through the wire. How do you measure that current? Do you cut the wire open, or how do you do that?
No.
No? What do you do?
No, there's a device, you just clamp around it.
Just go to, now, you don't have to touch the wire, do you?
Don't have to touch it, no.
It just clamps on there, and it reads how many amps are going through that wire.
Yeah.
That's an electromagnetic field, and it doesn't go out very far. If I'm over here and the wire's over there, it's not going to measure it. You got to be close. But as that, and it won't measure it if you were in your car, which has only direct current, you can't use that. It's got to be the alternating current, which goes, 60 cycles a second. But if you increase that cycles, how many times it changes direction from 60 times to maybe 500,000 times. How many of you remember the old radios in the car? This isn't a car radio.
Oh, yeah.
Remember 520, 660, 820? Those are cycles per second, thousands of cycles per second. So 820 is 820,000 cycles per second. Now what has happened is 60 cycles doesn't go out very far, but when you get at that high speed, it goes out, it goes it goes for hundreds of miles, And and then you remember the FM radio band? You had a switch on there, and you had a little dial that moved across there. Now it's all got these digital things. But I got an old car, so I copied that from there. But so we understand a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum they're talking about. I'm getting to light in a minute. Here, since I didn't have a clue how to make this thing work, I made one of these. You better straighten up this lady. Man, I get home with it. Here is now the AM radio band. They're relatively slow. We said 500,000 cycles per second. We get up here in the FM band. It starts at 88 million cycles per second. That's a lot. But this is still low. Then we get up here to the radar. It's up here in this band. Actually, a lot of cell phones are starting to get up there. And you remember also the microwave oven is there. Remember there was, who was it, Amanda or something, used to call it a radar range?
Yeah.
Because it's that same frequency there. Microwaves is, what do you call this?
Pacemakers.
Pacemaker users, beware or be cautious because microwave oven is being used. Now, I always wonder, well, why? What does it have to do with what do the two have to do with together? Have you ever driven down the road? You're going the speed limit, or maybe 5 miles over, and you come along there, and you see a policeman with a radar gun. What happens? Your heart jumps. Your knee jerks. So it must be the same situation. Okay. And then after you get there, you get higher frequencies. Instead of cycles per second, this is in the 5,000 megacycles, or 5,000 million cycles per second. And we get on up here into starting to get into infrared. Now you can't see this, our eyes can't see this about here until it gets way on down here. And now then, there's a little place in this infrared here. Now infrared, if you feel the heat from the sun, or you feel the heat from your stove, and that is, some of it comes through the air, but you can feel it. Anybody have a lamp in the bathroom? It's some people have lights that are infrared lights, and you can see part of it because part of it's invisible, but most of it is, you can feel it. It's a heat. So most of this infrared is in the form of heat, and all of this stuff here comes from the sun. I mean, we can get some here, but the sun puts out all this. And then we get on down here to the infrared, and we come here with a little band. It's called light. That's what we see. And what's so important about that light is it does more things than just we can see it. It's very important. And then I had to buy Jerry two deals that Michael, what do you call these things to get have colors in them? I had to buy them 2 of them. These colors. Huh? Yeah, get these colors. Well, this, if I spread this out, this is more like what it looks like. So you have red on one end, which is the lower frequencies, a light, and this is the higher frequency. We've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So you have all those things, and what's so amazing is our eyes can discern all those things. And so after we got past the visible light, then we get, this was infrared, which is below red, and this is ultraviolet, which is above violet. Well, they named it. And then after you get the ultraviolet can be real dangerous to us. And that's why even the low bands, which we get down in here, a lot of people, they say, man, you need some kind of stuff to keep the ultraviolet from getting to your skin. So you have all these ultraviolet, things you're supposed to put on when you get out in the sun, including the cap. So we have this ultraviolet, but it gets worse and worse. But if you get on up in here, it would kill you if you didn't have any protection on there. And the atmosphere doesn't let most of these ultraviolet waves get through. Doesn't let a lot of infrared get through. And then after the ultraviolet, we have X-rays, and we know how dangerous that is. But you always feel uncomfortable when you go in and get your teeth X-rayed, and the girl, the lady is doing that. She goes back behind a lead shield to give you that. You go, oh man, I'm out here with these X-rays. Of course, she's doing that because she's doing that all day. But you feel a little, well, it must be kind of dangerous. Too much X-rays is not good. And it seems like the effects build up the more you have, the more then. And then you get on up here and you get gamma rays and wave out. These are very dangerous. Then you get cosmic rays. Cosmic rays are very hard to stop, but we don't. The atmosphere stops most of them. Although they have detected cosmic rays down in coal mines, deep in the earth, so they can penetrate. So that's more than you probably wanted to know. But I want to talk about the visible light. That visible light is just right. Now, this fellow that wrote this book called Michael Vinton, who called it The Children of Light. He's a scientist, but he also wrote one that I just got through reading. It was called The Wonder of Water. And what's so amazing is water is built that it only lets light through. You think, well, man, anything, glass will stop most ultraviolet light. It won't stop visible light, but it'll stop ultraviolet light. In fact, I used to work at a place where we were using ultraviolet light to radiate living cells, and we had to use quartz. We couldn't use regular glass because ultraviolet wouldn't go through there. So it's just right. It just has to be right. And the atmosphere happens to be this wonder of water. Water lets visible light through. It doesn't let much. It doesn't let much infrared through. It doesn't let much infrared. But it lets enough infrared. It absorbs enough that it keeps us warm. If we didn't have the atmosphere above us, around us, and it heats up and it lets so much of this through, at night it would get down below zero. It would get down up the moon. It'll vary 250 degrees in the sun and minus 250 in the shade. It's not a good place to live. It's bad enough here, And but the water is just right to give us this here. And then the same way with ultraviolet. It doesn't let most ultraviolet. It'd kill us if it lets all of it through. So let me get off my rabbit trail. I never have been hunting, but I have chased a lot of rabbits. Never caught one, but chased them. Getting hungry to boil out another one there. How fine-tuned the universe is. I know that doesn't have much to do with what we're saying, except the light part. The light is so important. And Another important part about visible light is the color that chlorophyll in the plants work. If we didn't have chlorophyll, we wouldn't have oxygen. We wouldn't have energy. The plants grow, they take in carbon dioxide, and they use that and they convert it, they take that energy from the sun, that ultraviolet, and they make oxygen. And they grow, and they deteriorate, and we can burn wood. We can have heat because of that. We can, the coal and the oil and all these things we use, that's from plants that have fermented. And that's why they call them fossil fuels. They're fossil plants. So it was so important that these colors happen to be just right. Green is in the middle of the spectrum. That's what chlorophyll uses. What if it didn't have that? We wouldn't be here. There's so many things that have to go together for us to even exist. And we just accept them. We just think, man, isn't it evolution great? Isn't it just great how all this just happened? Wow. So, but let me try to get back to Ephesians. Well, not yet. Yeah. It says, let me read again, verse 8. For you were once darkness, but now you're light in the world. Walk as children of the light, and as children of the light. For the fruit of the Spirit in all goodness, righteousness, truth, and finding out what is acceptable in the Lord. John talks about, and this is the condemnation, that light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. And everyone practicing evil hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his deeds be exposed. You know, people who are not Christians, they like the dark. You ever go? When I was a kid, I'd never been to very many bars. Tell me about it. What's it usually like in a bar? Is it bright?
And what?
Is it bright lights like this? You used to go to a bar years
every
ago.
night.
Every night. Did they have a lot of bright lights in there?
No, it's dark and stunk.
Yeah. And it didn't.
Don't want to show the.
What was it last time you went? No, it's men love darkness rather than light. But we are the light of the world. This is what people see Christ through us. I've told our class, Bible study class, fellowship, this story several times, but it's a good example. Her brother was not a Christian, and he did everything. He smoked and drank and ran around and everything else. I don't know. He had married four times, but that's all right. One of them was the same one twice, and if that counts. Anyway, one Christmas, he came up to me. He was drunk. He came to me, and man, he started chewing me out. You think you're so good? I never one time ever talked to him about his drinking or his running around or anything. Never. But man, he poked his finger at me. I thought he was going to hit me, but I must have been scared too. No, I thought he was going to hit me. Anyway, he said, "You think you're so good?" Well, I never asked that. But you know, he was watching us. He's watching her, and he's watching me, and see how consistent we are. Now, a lot of you folks here shame me from what kind of light I put out. Some of y'all do a lot better. But to him, he was watching us. And he finally, one time, he came to church because we invited him to eat lunch afterwards. And he came to church and got saved. And he told me right on, he said, "Man, this Bible, I used to read it so I could argue with you. I used to see where all the problems were in there so I could argue with it." He says, "It reads totally different now. It's not the same way." But I say that because he told us, he said, "I watched you and Jerry. I watched your life." Now, we didn't, unfortunately, we weren't out preaching to him all the time. He was just watching our life. He was watching our light. Not what we said, but how we acted, how we did. And he got saved, and it changed his life forever. and he wasn't any doubt that he was saved. So that's part of life. And their deeds get exposed. Evil deeds are exposed. Verse 11, we have no fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. I hate to say this, but when I was a kid, we had some what we call water bugs. Now, you'd walk in the kitchen, you'd never see one. Unless it was night and turn the light on. You go in there and flip the light on. Man, they're all, I don't know what they're up to, but they're up to no good. You get out there and they're all running to get out of the light. And that's kind of the way we should be. People don't like their deeds to be exposed. For it is even shameful to speak of those things which were done by them in secret. So, verse 11, back again, we have no fellowship, and he's telling us to have no fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. Now, expose them, we don't have to go around, and if the Lord teach you to do it, I didn't have to go around telling my brother-in-law, man, you better quit that drinking and smoking and running around. The Lord's going to send you to hell. I never preached that to him. But you know what? He saw the light right here with her. He saw, because he knew her all her life. She knew how she changed when she was 15. She got saved, and he saw that light. And so he says, it's shameful to even speak the things that are done in them in secret. But in all things that are exposed are made evident by the light. For whatever makes evident is light. So this section here, therefore he says, wake up. No, he said that. Wake up, you who sleep. Arise from the dead, and Christ will give you life. What does it mean from the dead? Spiritually dead. Arise from the spiritually dead, and he will give you life. We just need to be imitators of God as dear children, as it says in verse 5, and walk in love, and walk in wisdom. So, any comments or thoughts or?
Well, of course, the light, we are reflecting Jesus. He's the light.
Yeah.
And when we're saved, God puts on us the righteousness of the Lord Jesus.
That's right.
We're reflecting Him.
Most of the time, he says he is the light, but in here, he's saying you're the light.
Yeah.
Because who is he talking to? People who have accepted him, who are saved, then they're becoming light. Lost folks aren't the light. They can be nice people, but they're not the light. The light is us. And it should always make us think, I could be a lot better light than I am to the world. I could do a lot more. And it was said, I had a verse here, it said, was it one of the parables was, Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but who? God gave the increase. We got to remember that. God gives increase. I was thinking what you were talking about, that fellow at the nursing home one time, about, you kept going to him and telling him the gospel and everything. You're planting and watering, but God gave the increase. Yeah. When I've heard people say, man, I've saved 20 people. No, you haven't saved one.
That's right.
Billy Graham never saved one person.
That's right.
Millions came to to Christ through him because he planted and watered. He never saved a person. So we got to remember that's our shed the light and plant and water, and those are other analogies. So, all right. Anybody else? All right.
I wish you would have shown me all of that stuff about the band and all. A few years ago, I could have saved a lot of money. I invested in some bands that you couldn't see.
Well, let me tell you, I know about those. They were right in here.
Yeah, but you can't see them.
Well, I didn't mark them. Yeah, Bill and I, we invested in some
Sure thing.
Sure thing. I mean, man, we're going to be rich. And I know we were going to give most of it to the church.
Yeah, that's,
But did you get an email yesterday or day before? Guy said he's given up on it. You know.
oh, I got one a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well. All right. I didn't put that on here.
Yeah, well, like I say, you can't see it, so.
Okay. All right. Let's pray. Lord, help us to be a light to the world. Help us to live a life that is a light. And Lord, help us to be concerned about these folks that need you. Lord, with I know the parable of the sower, how things some just fall on deaf ears. Some haven't heard the gospel. Some hear it and they believe it and they accept it. And Lord, help us to be good witnesses in the light to this darkness of this world, and we'll give you the praise for it. Amen.